talking before the show about some threats to the Clean Water Act, with something you're calling the Dirty Water Act that's
Right.
happening now in Congress that you're concerned about. And so I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, one of the most important, in terms of protecting our natural resources and water specifically, probably the most important law ever passed by Congress was almost 40 years ago in 1972 when the Clean Water Act passed. And that law basically said municipalities and industries can use our waterways for their waste, but they have to meet certain standards to protect drinking water supplies, recreation, downstream communities. And that law has single-handedly turned around the condition of our waterways in this country, from burning rivers, the Cuyahoga back in the early 1970s, from rivers that were filled with sludge worms because no life could live there.
And what's a burning river? What do you mean
Oil,
by that?
toxic substances catch on fire. This is
like,
how
so
industrial.
waterway would catch on fire.
That's
which seems
right.
like it couldn't happen. But
Well,
yeah.
we forget
Yeah.
that that's how it was in the 60s, and in the early 70s this law was passed. It has been a seminal, critical law to protect our waterways, and we used it, in fact, to successfully get the city of Atlanta to clean up its act and stop pouring raw sewage into creeks that run through our neighborhoods and into the river. We're very upset that a bill has been introduced in Congress, in the House, and passed Congress in less than a week, H.R. 2018, 2018. We do call it the Dirty Water Bill because it would roll back many of the protections in the Clean Water Act, delegating some things to the states that really should be the purview of the federal government. Because, of course, our waterways and our watersheds expand over many states.
Right.
And so we're disappointed that it made it so quickly through the House, and we're meeting with our senators and others to try to help them understand that this law is not just good for the environment, it's good for jobs, it's good for prosperity of communities. So it's a huge attack. It's the biggest attack we've seen in 15 years on the Clean Water
And what
Act.
they're saying, because the name of the bill that they're calling it the Clean Water Cooperative Federalism Act, that's the benign name for it.
Complicated too.
So, what are they saying? I mean, essentially, you're saying what it does is it kind of guts the federal level protections from the EPA, but what are they saying it does in terms
Well,
of
I think that we're seeing sweeping through this country a sentiment from some folks that we've got too much regulation and that the regulation is hampering jobs. In truth, we have to have a clean environment in order to have jobs and a good economy, and they go hand in hand. You don't deregulation, less regulation does not lead to more jobs. In fact, with our City of Atlanta case, the city has already invested $2 billion in fixing our plumbing here so that our creeks are cleaner and our river is cleaner. Lots of jobs associated with that, for sure. I think it's just unfortunate that the US EPA is being vilified as some sort of an enemy when people seem to have short memories that the EPA and some of our environmental laws have been critical to taking care of the health of our families, our children, making sure that we are drinking clean water and that sort of thing. And so defunding the agency, taking away its power, is exactly the wrong direction. We don't want to go there.
And I know, just like you're saying, it's a challenging political climate right now, and with an economic depression and different things, it seems to prioritize jobs over everything else. In fact, you probably remember in the Republican candidate, Michelle Bachmann called the EPA a job killer. Like, that was her little pithy
And she has, as far
soundbite.
as I can tell, there's no fact, no information to go behind that whatsoever. Jobs are critical. Mm-hmm. We think jobs are critical, but they are essential to, it's essential to have good community health and clean air, clean water, and those are just things that we've taken for granted in some ways for years, and I don't think we want to roll back the hands of time here on this one. This would be very much not a smart thing to do, and I think we will lose jobs. I think that hopefully our senators here in Georgia will listen to constituents Johnny Isaacson, Saxby Chambliss, will understand that but for the strong federal Clean Water Act, Atlanta would still be sending untreated sewage into the Chattahoochee River to our neighbors in Alabama and Florida. And that would make it even harder to come up with a negotiation with them on how much water they get. I think what we want is a level playing field for everybody. And so whether you're in Iowa, Florida, Georgia, California, you can rely on the fact that our waterways are going to be clean and healthy because science-based federal agency, the US EPA, has the purview over those laws. Now, the EPA does delegate the Clean Water Act to states, and so states implement it and have discretion. So EPA is really just creating a framework, a level playing field for everyone throughout this country. But I think that a lot of people are beginning to understand that pro-business is pro a clean environment. They have got to go hand in hand. If you're in LaGrange, Georgia, you cannot draw people, industries to come to your community if the upstream city is dumping sewage or whatever into the waterway going into your lake. Nobody wants to live on the lake.
Your property values
are going to go down. I mean, that's exactly. No, that's very, very true. It's very much a property rights issue, I think. And so we are pro-jobs, pro-economy, but pro-environment, and that's the bottom. On our website, we have information about the folks who voted against the bill, particularly John Lewis and David Scott, and Hank Johnson voted against this bill, and we are very appreciative for that.
Thank John Lewis.
Yes. But all the others, Sanford Bishop was absent, but I think all the other congressmen voted in favor of it, and I'm not sure they were really thinking about the potential implications for their constituents and property owners who need a strong Clean Water Act.
And your website is chattahoochee.org for people to find out more. And so then we have to worry about this bill in the Senate now. And so should interested or concerned citizens be writing their senators,
Absolutely. That's right. And the details will be up on our website, I know next week for sure, with the addresses and who to write and that sort of thing. Johnny Isaacson and Saxby Chambliss specifically. And I think that we also need to hold folks in the House accountable who voted for this bill. This was a huge step backwards. And it's not just this bill. We're seeing all kinds of attacks, as you mentioned earlier, on EPA. And the message is that post this recess, now that they'll be back in session, we're going to see some really far-reaching attempts to put EPA in a closet.
And so you had mentioned to me also that the state-level environmental protection organization, the EPD, as it's called,
Georgia EPD, that's right.
Environmental Protection Division, also has been kind of gutted in terms of its staff and its ability to protect water and environmental
You're exactly
in our
right.
State.
For the size of Georgia, the amount of the blessings we have in natural resources, we have an incredibly small environmental protection agency here in Georgia. In the last 3 years alone, their staff has been cut 44%, and I think it tops 50% if you go back even a few more years. You can't run a government agency, you can't run a business on half staff, and so we find ourselves, there's 7 riverkeepers in Georgia. We find ourselves out there doing a lot of monitoring and other work that truly should be the job of the state agency, but they don't have the staff to do it, and in some cases the political will. So our groups have become, I think, more important, and we all are membership organizations. We've got 5,000 some members, and we're looking for more people to join us and get involved.